Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. The Giants won a football game, and I know that it's just preseason, but there's actually a lot of good things that we saw in the game, and then we're going to talk about some concerns. So today is just going to be a high-level overview, and then this week we'll dive into a little bit deeper the good and the bad, and then the Giants Jets game or practice is on Wednesday, and then the game is this weekend. So I'm just so happy we're officially in football season and now actually have real live action to discuss. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the offense. And the one thing that I want to say too is if you did not see this, Abdul Carter tweeted W and then he wrote Dubs only. And look, again, say what you want about preseason, but this team has not won a football game in a very long time. And the fact that they're starting off the season with a win when they played sub starters, when they played backups against the Bills starters, ultimately it's about confidence. And when players have the confidence and they see that all of the practice that they do all week and the game plans and this and that, when they all work on Sundays, it makes a big difference. Now, I know it's preseason and I know there's no game plans, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I want to start with this. All four quarterbacks during this game led scoring drives. Now, the Giants starting offense ended up with a field goal as opposed to a touchdown because of those god-awful penalties from James Hudson. So the penalties were still an issue, but overall, this offense was able to move the ball against Bills starters, against Bills backups. And I think that's the most important thing. They put up 34 points, which again, they have not put up that many points, whether it's been preseason or the regular season outside of the Colts game in a long time. And I think we've all been saying that ultimately we feel like the defense is going to do the right amount of work. We just need the offense to score points consistently. And I think what we saw from this weekend is that this is a start, that they're able to move the ball and score points. What is not okay is the penalties. And, unfortunately, they came from James Hudson, who is likely to not be the starting left tackle this year. But it's just a reminder, right, that it's preseason and this team has a lot of things to clean up. But I think the fact that all four quarterbacks were efficient with the ball, there were no turnovers, they put up 34 points, they did a really nice job of moving the ball down the field. A great start, like I said. So let's start with the starting offense. So Russell Wilson successful moving the ball down the field. He got the ball in the hands of Wan'Dale Robinson, and obviously they were down Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, and Jalen Hyatt. So again, there's no game plans, there's no Malik Neighbors, and there's no Slayton. So we're not seeing what this offense is really going to look like. But I do think, again, the fact that they were efficient, they were able to move the ball down the field, the offensive line, outside of James Hudson's two penalties, did a wonderful job. And we're going to talk about the offensive line as a whole because there were at least 10 different offensive linemen out there and not a single sack on four different quarterbacks. Not one. Even when Joshua Zudu out there, which is mind-boggling to me and probably the same to you. So overall, we need to celebrate the offensive line. They were going against the Bills starters, and I think that's a really good start for so many of us who feel like this offensive line could be an issue this year. It's obviously nice to see that it started off well. Let's hope that continues. And again, we didn't even see Andrew Thomas, who is the best player on that offensive line, and everyone else was able to do their job. So, I'm optimistic. I think they did a really nice job. So Wilson had 7 pass attempts, 6 completions. The one ball that was batted down wasn't able to get to Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy was heavily involved. I loved that Theo Johnson was involved. And the wide receiver rotation was going really strong. Like every time they're substituting guys in, was kind of surprised that Zach Pascal got the start as opposed to some of the other wide receivers. It was him and DeQuan Felton, and I have barely seen DeQuan Felton with the ones throughout the entire training camp. So that was really interesting. But ultimately, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is how these guys play in preseason as they fight for a roster spot. So again, good showing from that starting offense. We didn't get to see the deep ball, of course, without Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton, and even without Jalen Hyatt. But I thought that they were efficient, good at getting the ball out, and good about moving the ball down the field. And look, there were not drops, there were not fumbles, they didn't turn the ball over, and there were no sacks. So overall, I would say it's a good start for this offense. They only played one series. I would like to see a lot more from them moving forward, but let's talk about Jackson Dart because he really was the star of the show when it came to this offense. And again, his offensive line, Joshua Zudu at left tackle, not a single sack. Unbelievable. Now, he's good at escaping. He obviously is very athletic. He's a great runner, tucks the ball, runs, great at ball protection, things like that. So, the fact that Joshua Zudu was his left tackle probably was easier for him than it would have been for someone else in that position who's not as athletic and fast as he is. But I have to say, I was really impressed with what I saw out of Jackson Dart. And, I've been thinking about this over the weekend because I went live on Instagram and was watching part of the game with a lot of other Giants fans. And, we were all talking about it. Brian Table is obsessed with this guy. I listened to his post game and the way that he talked about, yes, there were things that needs to be improved upon, but he was calm, cool, and collected out there. He made smart decisions with the ball. He processed his reads. Even Jackson Dart afterwards said on the one play, he did the one thing there were three things that I wanted him to do during this game: process his reads, slide, and make good decisions with the ball. And he did 2 out of 3. He didn't slide, but in his post game, he's like, I think that Dable liked it. And Dable literally was like, yeah, no, I like his toughness. And I'm like, dude, we can like the toughness, but, can we reiterate the slide thing? I know not every scenario is going to be the perfect scenario for him to slide, but you look at someone like Josh Allen, who's also a bigger belt quarterback who takes hits, he slides when necessary. So anyway, outside of that, I was really impressed with Jackson Dart. The sideline touchdown throw to Montreal, Washington was perfect. One of the best things about Jackson Dart coming out of college, this was the number one thing that he was good at, was making plays under pressure. And we got to see it game 1 of the preseason, which I thought was really impressive. The Bills had their starters in, they were rushing to him, and on that throw, the touchdown throw, he's halfway to the ground as Montreal, Washington is catching it. So he led the quarterback with anticipation. He was accurate, put the ball in a good spot, and made the throw while having, these guys running at him, and he ended up on the ground. So I was impressed with the things that he did. Again, he's not running this full-scale offense again at this point, but ultimately, first preseason game, I think, was a really good start for him. He did a nice job. And, I'm excited to see more of him. And I think that's the consensus, right? Is that coming out of this game, we feel like he did a good job with this offense and we would like to see more of him. Let me know how you guys feel, but I feel like he did a really nice job. So his stats were 12 for 19 for 154 yards, 1 touchdown, and then he had that really nice scramble for 19 yards where he kind of dove head first a little bit, but these are the things that I also think make people excited about Jackson Dart. He really is that dual threat quarterback. He's fast, he's aggressive, he's not going to be afraid to throw the ball. One thing that I think we saw during the game too is that he's not only is he not afraid to let it loose, but he's not afraid to let the wide receiver make a play and say, I'm going to give you the opportunity, you go up and get it. It's like we always say with Malik Neighbors, right? Just throw the ball, Malik Neighbors is going to catch it. But you have to be able to pull the trigger and throw the ball. And that's something that we saw from Jackson Dart this weekend. So it was nice to see that connection that he had with little Jordan Humphrey and Montreal, Washington that we saw all throughout camp translate at the next level in game. So I'm excited to see more from him. The biggest thing is that I really just want him to slide a little bit more. That's it. Tommy DeVito and Jameis Winston also did a nice job, led the team on scoring drives. Jameis's interception luckily got called back due to a penalty, but, I think we all kind of see that and we're like, oh, that's what Jameis does. But he throws a really nice ball, great relationship and rapport with a lot of the wide receivers that I think we saw throughout the game. And overall, Jameis is fun to watch. That's what it comes down to for me. And he's always going to pull the trigger. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to scramble sometimes and take the ball on the run. And I think there's a lot to like about Jameis. So I'm glad that he is a Giant. And Tommy DeVito also had a nice showing. Again, no sacks for any of the quarterbacks, no turnovers. So overall, nice job. I think what I would like to see moving forward throughout the rest of preseason is more Russell Wilson, more Jackson Dart, more Jameis, and a little less Tommy DeVito. I just think ultimately Tommy DeVito's not going to be on this team moving forward, and it's nice that he's getting the reps to showcase to other people what he can do, but let's move on, okay? Last thing I wanted to say about the offense is Turbo Miller, my guy, had an amazing showing. He converted at least 3, I think there were 4 third and longs. third and 8, third and 9, and I think a third and 12, and one that might have been a third and 20. And I just think, like, if anyone hasn't been at camp or they don't really know who Turbo is, I think that game was a perfect example of what he's really good at. He's the only player that we've seen in the last, I don't know, 6 years who successfully executed the screen game and leave it up to the quarterbacks. They made some nice throws to put him in a position to be able to make those plays and be able to get all that yardage. But his explosiveness is undeniable. We got a really good showcase of that during the preseason game. So next up, let's move along to the defense. I don't know how you could watch that starting defense and not be excited. Abdul Carter, 3 for 3 in his 3 edge rushing snaps. He had 3 pressures, and he's going against a Pro Bowl left tackle. Like, when he was in, they were going against their starters. No slouch. And Deion Dawkins, I think his name is. It's just incredible. Incredible. I love this defense. I'm really excited. My biggest concern with this defense, because I feel like with the starters in there outside of Dexter Lawrence, they are going to be able to stop the run. I think we saw some good things. Micah McFadden made a really nice tackle, and he's someone that struggled with the tackling issue, and I think he's really improved that over the years. Perfect example of what he's capable of doing. The run defense was a little bit better than I hoped it would be. Saw some nice plays from them. The biggest concern is Tay Banks. And, I feel like he was kind of hit or miss during the game. Like, I felt like there were a lot of plays where I was like, oh my God, what are you doing out there? And then there were some other plays on the incompletion where he turned his head around and was able to force the incompletion. But there's just times with him where it's like, it's the same thing over and over. And, Joe Shane was on the broadcast, and he said, when asked about why Tay Banks played so much longer than every other starting defensive player, and he said, he's in a competition for cornerback 2 with Cordell Flott. So that is still going strong. Now, Cordell Flott did not play because of injury. And it was the same thing. Dable said everyone who played was healthy. If they did not play, it's because they're dealing with some sort of injury and the medical team did not allow them to play. So let's all keep our fingers crossed for next week that we see some of these guys. These snaps for Cordell Flott are going to be really, really important. So I hope that we get to see more of him. I hope he's ready to go this week. The biggest concern that I have outside of Tay Banks is if, God forbid, anyone gets injured, we still can't stop the run. So, I hope that that's something that's going to be improved upon over the next couple of weeks. But something else to be aware of is that the Giants are the 3rd team, because of their losses, on waivers. So if anyone comes available on waivers, they're going to be one of the top teams to be able to bring someone new in. So if there's a concern still about stopping the run, and let's say they don't want to keep Jeremiah Ledbetter, but Roy Robertson-Harris has did a nice job, and so has Nacho, then they have the opportunity to bring in another defensive lineman. DJ Davidson got a sack. So there were guys who stepped up a little bit, but I don't feel good that if, God forbid, one of our defensive linemen goes down, that we're actually going to be able to still stop the run. So let's see how that improves over the next couple of weeks. I think this game and these practices against the Jets are going to be very telling, but it's also really that cornerback 2 battle has to be locked up. But I saw a lot of good things from the defense. Obviously, that front 4, the versatility that we saw from Abdul Carter. One snap he's lined up on the edge, one he's lined up as a defensive tackle. Like, he's just really going to be utilized all over the field, and I just cannot get over how excited I am to continue to watch him develop and play. He only played 6 snaps, but I think that we're going to see a little bit more of him as preseason goes on. We saw Dane Belton as the 3rd safety in with the other 2 starting safeties. Drew Phillips had a nice day. So I just feel like overall it was good on both sides. Lastly, someone else who was a little hit or miss is Nick Jones, the cornerback that I've been excited to watch. He is going to be the backup slot corner. At least he's the number 2 on the depth chart right now behind Drew Phillips. He actually led the team with 5 total tackles. There were, a couple plays that I don't know if it was a miscommunication or what, but it seemed like he was not where he was supposed to be following the receiver. So curious to see how he develops, but we'll talk more about other players to watch in preseason week 2 next. The biggest thing that I just want to talk about when it comes to the concerns that I have is kind of like what we already talked about, right? So you can't force Cordell Flott to get better anytime soon, but hopefully he's going to keep progressing because he needs those snaps. And I think that Banks needs that little competitive aspect to continue. And then with the defensive line, like, can guys like DJ Davidson, who got a sack, or Jordan Riley or Jeremiah Ledbetter, any of these guys going to be able to step up and make plays in week 2? Because we need that depth there. And if it's not, is that something that Joe Shane goes out and gets off the wire? Does he bring in another defensive lineman? Does he bring in another corner to potentially be the cornerback too? Now, I think there's a possibility they bring in a veteran, but I'd be surprised if they end up bringing in someone like that to be cornerback too. But the Giants get a win. It feels good, and we will continue to talk more about them all throughout this week as they get ready to play the Jets, so stay tuned.